So the next aspect to look at is refuge. And all the Buddhist traditions have some notion of refuge. The basis of refuge is thinking that we need some kind of protection. We need some place to go to which will keep us safe. So that's, again, predicated on the idea that somehow we are in danger, or we are vulnerable, or there are forces against us. So from the Dzogchen point of view, the first thing that we'll be looking at is who is the one who is in danger? What is the nature of this attack that is happening to myself? So you can have protection from samsara, protection from the habits and impulses you have in yourself, protection from untoward experiences, whether you see these as accidents or the impact of demons or local spirits on your life, depending on how you see the world. But essentially, it's thinking, I need some protection. So who is it that can give us protection? When we're small, if we're lucky, our parents give us protection of some kind. But as we move out into the world, we find that many situations which should protect us don't protect us. But also, we find ourselves drawn towards self-destruction, that we behave in ways which are not particularly helpful to us, and yet they seem enormously important to do. Who can we really rely on? Can we rely on the government? Can we rely on friends? Can we rely on family? Can we rely on ourselves? A lot of the time, we focus on how other people let us down, how other people betray us. But there's another and more important aspect, is that we betray ourselves. We let ourselves down. Because although we might know things, we don't listen to what we know, and we find ourselves being involved again and again in situations which are not helpful. So from the Buddhist point of view, the main refuge is in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. The Buddha here is, on a general level, the historical Buddha Shakyamuni, who awoke from the intoxications of his birth situation, of being a very privileged young man who was entitled to have whatever he wanted. And he had a first awakening when he recognized that life in the palace and the life of privilege was not the whole of life. When he saw, in his traveling outside of the palace, he saw a sick person and an old person and a corpse. And he started to think, if that happens to them, and they have a human body, maybe that will happen to me, and I have a human body. And that's an enormously important thing. You know, at this time, in local hospitals, people are dying. People are being prepared for surgery. But somehow, we live as if we won't die. We live as if we won't have cancers and terrible diseases and so on. So the Buddha's first awakening was, because I am human, I will die. Because I am human, I have no particular protection. And we have to remember, he was a very privileged person. So later, when he had his awakening under the Bodhi tree in Bodh Gaya, he awakened to the fact that there was a protection, but it wasn't on the basis of ordinary human identity, not on the basis of class or race or gender or status, but on the basis of seeing that most of the things that he had relied on before were actually cheating him, and the things that he had never attended to were the things that were giving him refuge. That is to say, his gaze was wrong. He had been looking in the wrong direction for happiness. And, you know, most of us do that in our lives. It's very, very normal, isn't it, to see in any city on a Friday night, Saturday night, crowds of young people milling around, doing underage drinking and taking drugs. That feels like a refuge from the pressure of school and the, demands of parents and so on. But there's no real refuge in it. One's simply hoping there must be more to life than this. If only I can get out of it. If only I can get some good mates, we'll be able to really make something happen. But then, of course, it doesn't really work out. And so we seek object after object of refuge, whether these are very conventional things about getting a proper education and a good job and a marriage and so on, or whether these are very radical in terms of being spaced out and running around or traveling around the world or living in a bender. People make lots of experiments, but do they generate any real happiness? So from the Buddha's understanding, the real refuge came from recognizing who he was. And in that moment of his awakening, he makes this Bhumi Paschimutta. He touches the earth and he says, I call on the earth to witness that I am free from entanglement in the concerns of everyday life. That is to say, he wasn't putting the burden of his existence, the sense of who he wasn't putting that onto his thoughts and feelings and sensations. Of course, he continued to have thoughts, feelings and sensations, otherwise he wouldn't have been able to speak. But he was able to say, these are not me, in the sense of these do not define me. So when we read in Buddhist texts, sometimes in translation, that there is no self, it doesn't mean that there is no individual existence. We all exist individually. Even the Buddhas look slightly different. What it means is there is no internal or inherent definition. So, say for example, you have a Lego set. You have all these different pieces. Some of them have 3 little bumps on them, some have 2, some have 1, some have 5. And with these pieces of Lego, you can make many different things. You could make a house or a fortress. Most of us have done things like that. Or before Lego, there was Meccano. There's building sets where you use standard pieces to create something. When you put all the pieces in place and you build it up, you suddenly have a castle or an aeroplane. But it has been built out of the pieces. The pieces came together, and at a certain point you thought, oh, it's a castle, it's an aeroplane. If you take all the pieces out, you don't have a castle or an aeroplane anymore. You just have these pieces of Lego, which can be used to create something else. In the same way, our world is full of many different building blocks, and we can create many different possibilities with our existence. We have to create. It's one of our capacities as we manifest in this world, that we're always creating things. What we do, though, is to fall in love with or to become intoxicated by the things we've created and then imagine that they're truly existing. So the key thing is to stay with the fact that these are pieces of Lego which look like a castle, which look like an aeroplane. I say aeroplane, I say castle, because I have this concept in my mind, but there is no castle there. That was the major part of the Buddha's awakening under the Bodhi tree, to realize that the concretization of the world, the reification, that is to say, to see truly existing things, truly existing entities, is just an act of imagination. It is our overactive imagination which causes us to believe that things truly exist when they only exist conventionally. That's what Lego does. You take pieces of plastic, you put them together in patterns, And then suddenly you have a castle. Look, Mum, it's a castle. Oh, that's great. How did you do that? Well, I did this and this. Wow, God, you're smart. So you got this castle. Where did the castle come from? The castle came from your head. What you got in front of you is bits of coloured plastic. But we have a cultural, social convention that agrees we're going to call this a castle. But we don't just agree with it in a calm way. We believe in it. If you go to an art gallery, go to the National Gallery, paintings worth millions of pounds, and you look at a constable, and you think, look at that tree. There is no tree there. What you see is bits of paint. These are very expensive bits of paint. You see a tree. Where is the tree? In your head. What's on the wall? It's a con. It's a fraud. There ain't no tree there. It's just daubs of paint. We agree it's a tree. We agree it's very important. There are many kinds of modern art which lots of people with a more conservative sensibility would say, but that's not art, that's rubbish. Someone else who is more in touch with the avant-garde, so-called, would say, no, that's truly art because of this, this, and this, and this. That is to say, the same object is being layered with projections, interpretations, associations, and therefore either it rings true or it rings false, not on its own terms, because there are no own terms in any object. There is no inherent truth in any object at all. It's all a construct. So, this is what the Buddha saw, and this is why we take refuge in him. This radical vision that says, at the very moment when we think we've got it, that's where we've lost it. The very point where, having spent a couple of hours moving all these little bits together and trying to piece them together, you finally got your castle or your aeroplane, you've just cheated yourself. The really exciting thing was putting bits of plastic together and seeing how they could fit. That was creative and connective. As soon as you got the aeroplane, you're cheated because it's only plastic. That's the thing. We add the idea into it, and we take the idea as the main thing about it. Our existence has been nothing but work. Has our work led us anywhere? Only to new work. Will it never end? My mum always used to say, I'm just a skivvy in this house. I do the cooking and the cleaning, and nobody says thank you except once a year, and I get my shampoo and my bottle of perfume. Too damn right. That's it. That's it. It doesn't end. If we're lucky, we live long enough to have endless non-endings. You put the Lego together, you get your aeroplane, then it's a bit boring, so you take it all apart and then you build your castle. Then it gets boring, you take it apart and you build something else. That's what we're doing with the whole of our life. And yet, we're doing it in the name of getting to the aeroplane, getting to the castle, getting sorted, doing your A-levels, maybe going to university, getting your life into a particular kind of shape. How do we do that? That's a really central thing about the Buddha's understanding. He's saying there is no rest. Life is a marathon. It's not a sprint. No matter how hard you try, you will not get to a place where it's sorted. It's never sorted. And especially if you're foolish enough to take the Bodhisattva vow and connect your luck and your life to everyone else's, how could it ever be sorted? But it would never be sorted anyway. Being sorted is not really the point. Being connected is the point. That every situation we meet gives us a chance to move our energy, to express ourselves, to connect, sometimes with tears, sometimes with happiness. That's at the heart of the Buddha's first teaching, which brings us on to the refuge of the Dharma, when he says, there is the truth of suffering. That is to say, we find ourselves in a situation where it's not what we want. Either we don't get what we do want, or we get what we don't want. That's happening a lot of the time. But that this suffering has an origin, it has a basis. And we can understand that basis. And if we understand that basis, it can be removed. And there is a method for doing that. And all the Buddhist teachings have evolved from that. So taking refuge in the Dharma is a way of understanding that our suffering comes because we believe in entities, in truly existing things. We believe we can sort out our lives and know what's what. And we believe that we can then have rest. Like it says, in the good book. For 6 days God labors and creates the world. And on the 7th day, he has a little rest. Work's over. But actually, it was just beginning for him, because God's supposed to keep his eye on everything that's going on. And I think we are quite able to give God lots of trouble. Wouldn't you think? So he didn't really get much of a rest. That's it. Life goes on. Life goes on. The question then is, how can I live in a dynamic universe without trying to control it and think that we'll have it sorted? If you think of Marxist dogma, if you think of National Socialist dogma, if you think of any of the great dogmatic systems, they have all been ways of saying, we can come to a final solution. We can bring about the end of history. We can bring about the triumph of the working classes. And then it will be back to paradise. Paradise regained. It was what was offered to the soldiers in the Second World War. When it's over, a world fit for heroes. The National Health Service. There you go. That was what was offered. Sacrifice today, tomorrow jam eternally. This is one of the great fantasies we have in our lives. Actually, our nature is stillness and movement. The mind is always moving, the body needs to move. Stillness is not the reward you get at the end of movement. Stillness is the very ground of movement. Stillness is something we have to find inside ourselves, moment by moment, as we speak, as we move, as we do our various activities. Because if we think that somehow, if we do enough movement, we'll suddenly become still, it doesn't quite make sense. So people work all week and then they have the weekend. And then they're often busy because there's so much to do. There's always something. Is that not true? So when will it end? Well, it won't. It won't end. That's terrible. How will I ever have a rest? You're trying to rest in movement. Movement moves, so you won't find any rest there. Look somewhere else. But all I've got is movement. There's always something. The kids, I thought they'd leave home and they'd get on with their own lives, but they keep coming back and they've always got problems, and now I've got to look after their kids. And people's lives are like that all over the place, constant turmoil. Why did you think that movement would become still? Stillness is not the same as movement. Where is your stillness? Look into yourself. So the Buddha said, these three basic propositions, the nature of suffering that we've just been looking at, impermanence, which we looked at in the morning, and the absence of inherent self-nature. In the first teaching, he taught of it and said that what you take to be a person is actually a bit like a Lego set construction. It's brought together, it comes into being by the interaction of the 5 skandhas. That is to say, form, which is shape and color, feeling, tone or sensation, which is positive, negative or neutral, perceptions with all the filters that go with that, associations, which are habitual constructs, the beliefs and values that we bring into any situation, and our capacity for consciousness, which is the consciousness of our five senses and their organizing consciousness. When these five factors are operating together, they give us the sense of what is a person. On a very ordinary level, if we were to have our brain removed, we wouldn't be doing very well. If we had our heart taken out and nothing else was put in, we wouldn't be doing very well. Take out our liver, you wouldn't be doing very well. That is to say, these vital organs are part of your existence. What you take to be you, the naivety of your simple body, is based on the collaboration of the vital organs and all the other factors in your body. The blood supply, the lymph nodes, and so on. Everything has to collaborate. This embodied existence is an exquisite, subtle collaboration of an incredible complexity of factors. Our body demonstrates to us the absence of simplicity in our existence. That is to say, manifestation is always complex and interactive. So, rather than trying to sort our lives out, we have to look, what is the ground or the basis of this experience? That is awareness. Why is it that we don't encounter this awareness in our daily life, given that we are, intelligent, educated people with lots and lots of resources? From the Buddhist point of view, that's because we are truly mesmerized, we are fascinated, we are enchanted, we are bewitched by objects. We think, if I get this, then I'll be happy. I just have to do this. When I finish this, then I can relax. That is to say, the answer to the problems of my existence lie in the object. If only I can find the right object, then I'll be okay. Whether that's a partner, or a job, or a book to read, or a holiday to have, or a drug to take, it's always out there. The Buddha's essential teaching through the Dharma is, the answer isn't in the object. It's in who is the one who claims to be the subject, given that subjects are always involved with objects. That is to say, as a person, from the first time you wake up in the morning till you fall asleep at night, you're always into something. You're thinking about this or that. You've got to go and have a cup of tea. Then you've got to think, oh my God, the time, we've got to do this. That is to say, the world speaks to us or we go out to the world. It's a constant toing and froing of subject to object, object to subject. And that's what keeps this state of samsara turning. But who is the one who is the subject? When we look at ourselves, we hit this waterfall of ideas. I'm just me. Well, I'm me. Well, you've known me for a while. I'm just me. What are you asking that stupid question? I'm me. Shut up. So, here's a wall. You can't get through that. I'm just busy. Why? I don't know. That's the way that people bat these things out. I work as a therapist. And in my experience, most people who come to therapy have no real desire to inquire into who they are. They simply want to get sorted and get back into the battle. They want to get on with life. And that's what the government's development of this new Layard scheme of, CBT for everyone is about. Getting people back into life. What life? Anyway, the life that's there. Whatever bops them on the nose. But who am I? Let's not look there. That's much too complicated. Just do what you have to do. Okay, but what is that? Well, let me tell you. If you don't know, I'll tell you. Government's very good at that. From a Buddhist point of view, the central question is, who am I? At this very moment, I have thoughts, feelings and sensations, and when I wrap myself in them, they're like a duvet. And sometimes the duvet's warm, And sometimes it's very damp and cold. But anyway, it gives me some kind of protection, some kind of wrapping in. Taking off the duvet, what is this naked being itself? Who am I when I'm not wrapped in anything? That's the central focus of Dzogchen. And that is the heart of the Dharma, to see how we mistake our clothes for ourselves. Most people believe they are ghosts. They have no true existence. But this no true existence is a kind of 19th century nihilism, a kind of absence of existence at all, a kind of empty nothingness. And only by fulfilling my social function, by having a value for other people, can I claim any right to true existence. The Buddhist understanding of emptiness is very different. Buddhist emptiness says, from the very beginning, there have never been any real entities that you could rely on. Everything is dynamic, interlocking patterns of energy which manifest and demanifest and manifest, and you can never catch them, and you can never catch yourself. Each of us in this room has been 5 years of age at one time. Can you remember being 5? Now you're not 5. You'll never be 5 again. But at one time you were 5. You were 5. Imagine you went to primary school and you sat there, your first year in primary school, and you sat at your little desk. Hello. And you look around, and you have a little box, maybe with some Smurfs on it or something on it, and you've got your little sandwich for lunch. You sit in there. What am I going to do? I don't know. And that's gone. That was you. You were that. When you were 5, you were fully identified as 5. Because when you were 5, you'd nowhere else to go. When you're 5, you can't be 4. You can't say, I'm not going to school, I'm not going to school, I don't like school, I'm not going to school. You're going to school. I don't want to. Sweetie, you're going to school. Because you're not 4. And when you're 5, you can't be 6. I want to be big, I don't like this. Can't I get a bigger bike? Well, you're not big enough for the bike. Yeah, but I want a bigger bike. My friend's got a bigger bike. Yeah, but you're not as big as your friends, so you have to have that bike. You're only 5. That's it, isn't it? But you're not 5 anymore. Isn't that amazing? If you can remember in your body what it was like to be 5, how real it was, that was you. It ain't here anymore. It's not here. And now you are, whatever age you are, and if you're lucky, you'll get another year at least. And then maybe another one, we don't know. Anything can happen. But all we've got is what we've got. So it's a very beautiful thing, this. The very vitality of our being, which causes us to be alive, is just a little bit cranked up, a little bit over intense, so that we, this is me, yeah. If you just lowered the amplification a little bit, you could be exactly you, but with a little bit more space. That's really what the Buddhist teaching is about. Bring a little bit more space and allow the identification to be, this is today's me. Morning me is already gone. This is afternoon me. Then there'll be evening me. And on and on. And each time it will be different. And if you're young, you experience that more because you grow. And then you say, Mum, these trousers are too short for me now. Or Mum, I can't wear these shoes anymore. Because your body's growing. When you get bigger, you don't notice that so much. Then you have to read fashion magazines to tell you that your clothes are out of date. Because you want to fit in somehow. But it's always changing. Can you see? All the Buddha's teachings fit together. It's very beautiful. Although there are these different yanas or different paths, all the methods fit together. They're saying the same thing. Be alive, be present in the moment, enjoy the exquisite, unrepeatable moment, which is here and then here and then here. But if we're trying to be in the past, missing it, longing for it, or being endlessly pissed off that we had a terrible childhood and we were treated badly, or if we're longing for the future, we're not where we are. So how to inhabit this existence? But the moment's very naked, isn't it? I don't know if you can remember as a kid, maybe on a bicycle going down a very steep hill. When I was a kid, we didn't have gears on a bicycle. So when the wheels are going very fast, the pedals go very fast as well. And you have to take your feet off. So you have to steer this thing and you've got very little control on the bicycle. That's what life is. Actually, we have very little control over our existence. We could leave this room and some drunken driver can go off the road onto the pavement and kill you. And you could be in a wheelchair for the rest of your life. We don't know how our life is going to evolve. This is it. We don't know. What is in front of us each moment is completely unformed. It's only because we're rather polite people that we sit in our seats for a long time. You might not. You might throw beer cans or something. In other places, and this afternoon, that's what people will be doing. There are many, many possibilities, but we lose the sense of the possibility because we agree to abide by certain unstated rules. That's the really important thing. When we take refuge in the Dharma, we take refuge in the fact there is nothing ahead of us except how we proceed. So if we've got a notion, I am me, I know roughly who I am, I know what my life's going to be like, yeah, it's okay, that's it. We've already filled the space. How could we be startled? How could we encounter something fresh and new? But if you just experience color, shape, sound, a car goes by, oh. As soon as you say it's a car, you don't need to worry about it. But if you just hear, it's an amazing world, isn't it? It's like being on acid. But you don't need that. It just is like that. It just is like that. What stops it being naked is our predictive conceptualization. Taking refuge in the Dharma is to be in a more immediate naked relationship with the world. Then we have taking refuge in the sangha. Sangha means, in the Mahayana tradition, it means firstly the assembly of the great bodhisattvas, those who have committed their life for the benefit of others, but also the assembly of the arhat, the assembly of the great shramanas, the great monks, and so on. It means we need other people, or certainly we need other beings. Why do we need them? Because our world is determined by other people. We are born into the world and we learn language. Language is that which is spoken by many people before we were born. After a while we start to speak and we have the confidence that we can speak our mother tongue. But we're speaking exactly our mother's tongue. We're always speaking someone else's language. It's the tongue of our mothers, and for our mothers, it was their mother's tongue, and their mother's tongue, and their mother's tongue. And so we swim in the sea of the cultural assumptions, the linguistic assumptions of other people. That's an amazing thing. My very own voice is giving voice to the words of my mother, my father, my grandmothers, my grandfathers, back and back and back. And all the people I've met, all the teachers I had in school, all the essays I had to write, all the times I opened a dictionary and learnt words. All of that which was not me becomes me, and then I speak it as me. But even as I speak it as me, it's still not me, because it's language. So that's an amazing thing. For me to be me, lots of people have been involved. All the teachers we had in school, Without them, how would we have learnt the things we learned? All the people who made our clothes, prepared our food. Without their work, we wouldn't be ourselves. Isn't that amazing? Hairdressers, opticians, doctors, dentists, all of these people have influenced us. The shape of our teeth, for example, whether we wear glasses or not. These people's lives are part of our life. Isn't that an amazing thing? We tend to want to keep them on the outside of it, and we just sort of take these things into our world, dropping them in bleach first so that they're pristine and they don't contaminate us. But you can't do that. We are infected with other people. Other people are like viruses moving inside us, transforming who we are. That's why in the Buddhist tradition they say there is no entity of a self. Other people's words speak through you. You see that particularly with younger people, because they tend to use catchwords again and again. There is a kind of slang, and if you want to be in your group of friends at school, you have to use that kind of slang, except you don't even think you have to. By being a member of that group, you find that you speak in that way. So how does that happen? That your very way of speaking is informed by other people, and by being informed, you become yourself. Hang on a minute. That doesn't make sense, does it? Informed. Something from outside comes inside, and it's me. But that's how it is. Me is a name I call myself after the fact of being informed by everything I've met. That's a very different thing. Therefore, we need sangha. And it's not that sangha is a choice. Sangha simply means a circle or a grouping together of people. So we have all these groups. We've all been part of family groups. Some people might have been in care, they've been in residential home groups, we've been in primary school groups, secondary school, and so on. All of these groups have influenced us. So from a profound level, sangha means not just high, holy, enlightened people somewhere else who we hope will help us, but the refuge comes from waking up to the fact that you are always already part of groups. You have no individual autonomous existence, and therefore no one is a stranger to you. So in the Mahayana tradition, that idea is developed through the idea that we have all been born many, many times. And in each of our lives we've had a mother. And the mother has done so many things for us. The mother has borne us in her body, and fed us from her own body, and cooked for us, and taught us to speak, and wiped our body when we got soiled, and taken care of us. And when we got upset, we've been comforted. That is to say, in all our lives, our existence has been connected with people, and if these people weren't there for us, our existence would have been very fragile. So we owe a great debt of gratitude to other people. Everyone we meet as a debtor. So when we meet people in the street, these are people who have already helped us. That's a very different view from the paranoid existence in a big city where you think, is this person going to mug me? You know, what danger do they offer to me? Everybody has already helped us. That's an amazing idea. Therefore, thank you. We can start, whenever we meet someone, just thinking, thank you. I'm in your debt. What can I do for you? And of course, it's such a better place to be, to think, what can I do for you, than what can you do for me? Because if I'm thinking, what can you do for me, I'm already thinking, well, what's the matter with me, or what do I need? I've already gone finite. But if I'm thinking, what can I do for you, I'm starting with the infinite, because I don't know what you're going to ask, and I'll try to do what I can. So I have to be very big. So this is, again, a very beautiful thing. that our connection with the world in taking refuge is to be returned to the infinity of our own potential, how can I make myself most available to other people? Now, of course, we experience the limits of our physical situation. We get tired, we get sick, and so on. We're not talking here so much about the concrete capacity, especially as we get old. There's lots of things we can't do. But we're talking about the orientation or the view of the heart that says, I am available. I will not turn my face from you. Even if I'm so tired I have to say, hang on, I can't take any more. I'm saying that in terms of my capacity. I'm not saying it in terms of my heart. My heart is still open. I mean, what an amazing way that would be to live. To accept that the connection is always already there. And that's really what sangha means. That it's not about stepping out of the narrowness of one's own world, but about accepting I don't have a private world to be in. I am always a public servant. Now, this government has a great hatred of public servants, although as far as I remember, members of parliament are supposed to be public servants. So if they hated themselves a bit more, that might be better for us. But anyway, they project out their hatred onto other people, social workers and so on. Being a public servant is a very good thing. But if you take the Bodhisattva vow, which we'll come on to shortly, you say, from this time on, I will always be a public servant. I have no private place to retreat to. What we do retreat into, or abide in, or rest in, is the unborn Dharmakaya, but it's not private, because it has no color, no shape, no beginning, no end, no top, no bottom. It's infinite. Our own nature is infinite. And out of that, energy ceaselessly arises. We're just connected. But, of course, when we walk down the street, hopes and fears, liking, disliking occurs. So, part of the practice, the preliminary practice, is to observe, how do I limit myself? How do I tie myself in knots? How do I turn my face away from the world? And look again and again, what am I trying to protect? What is it in me that feels so incredibly vulnerable? I mean, of course, our body is vulnerable. If you walk across the road without looking and a car hits you, you'll not be in good nick. That's just a fact. This flesh and blood body is very easy to destroy. One has to take care. Here we're not talking about foolishly just leaping into situations, but rather thinking of the more subtle moments where we pull back. We don't open ourselves. We want to keep something in reserve, something for me. And why? Because certainly in my own life, my experience is that when I've done that, afterwards I felt very sorry. Because whatever I've hung on to, especially for me, it sort of turns sour, it sort of rots, and what am I going to do with it? It's so much better to live one's life in contact. I don't know if that speaks to your experience. Because sufficient unto the day. The whole idea of, or the experience as it can be, of the Dharmakaya is that it's like a wellspring. It's the source. And each moment a new freshness will arrive. So if you live your life keeping a kind of doggy bag, an extra little bit for you, the curry you take home and you reheat it the next day, you think, oh, why did I bother? Okay, I'll say just a little bit. So that's the basic principles of refuge. So taking refuge, in the tantric tradition, we do that with the support of making prostrations. Prostrations are very important. We make full body prostrations, not as a way of permanently abasing ourselves, not as a way of saying, I'm inferior, I am less than, but as a way of honoring that which we are going to be. If you say you're at school and you think, A-levels are a waste of time, they're just rubbish. Why would you bother studying? You have to think, oh, I really want to get these because I want to do that and I want to do that, so this is useful. And if you can believe that something's useful, it mobilizes your energy. This is the basis for prostrations. If you can believe that the Buddhas, the Bodhisattvas have value, and you say, I think you are wonderful, you have these qualities, when you then go into the tantric practice and you visualize these deities, and then they come and dissolve into you, and you become inseparable from them, it's amazing. You have a real transformation. Because that which was not you, that which was so shining, so bright, so wonderful, is now coming together with you, and your nature and the nature of the deity have become inseparable. But if you're saying, well, not so sure, seems like a nice idea, but every time you flatten it, what will it mean? So prostrations are about joining the Buddha fan club. If you go to a gig and there are people there who really like the band, and they've got the t-shirt and they're really into it and they sing along to all the songs, and you've never seen them before, I think we would agree they're more into it. They probably get more out of it, because it's their world. And that's what the practice of taking refuge is about. It's not about joining a cult or a sect. It's about being so caught up and involved in something that it starts to show its value. I mean, there are people who travel around Britain going to see different ABBA lookalike bands. I mean, that is a devotional activity, isn't it? That shows great love for the original ABBA, so much so that you're prepared to go and watch copy bands that aren't all that great. What does that mean? It means that presumably at a certain period in these people's lives, they got really touched. These songs really meant something to them. They felt more alive. And it's very important to see that the practice of the Dharma and the practice of ordinary life are not so different. Getting involved in the practice is just the same as people getting involved in football. That is to say, the human aspect of our experience is the same. We invest our energy, we invest our belief, we become excited. When people are going to a big match and they paint their faces and they go in, they see their heroes coming out of the tunnel, tears come out their eyes. It says in the traditional Tibetan Buddhist texts, when you hear the name of your teacher, your eyes should open, tears should come out, the hairs on the back of your neck should bristle. It's the same thing. It means, wow. That's what it means, wow. It means, I see value in that. So when you do your prostrations, you see value there, and then in the practice you integrate with the object of value. You become the one that you idealize, which is a way of leaving all the limits and restrictions of your ordinary identity and being reborn through the object of your devotion into your own nature. That is to say, it is only through being reborn in the womb of the Great Mother that we become born as Buddhas. You can't make yourself a Buddha. But whether it's Padmasambhava or Tara or Chenrezig, any of the devotional deities, by putting your whole heart and soul and being into them, you see them as shimmering, as full of value. And because of that, you're not distracted by anything else. So without effort, your own faith has given you a one-pointed attention. You could spend years and years and years observing the breath going in and out of your nostrils, and your mind would still be distracted. But when you bring up the love of your heart, it's much easier to focus your attention. That's why they say that Tantra is a superior method to implement the basic Mahayana position. So it's using all your emotions, all your feelings into the task of integrating yourself into the absolute identity with the deity, and through that you are transformed and reborn, and you start to believe, my nature is radiant. Moment by moment I am manifesting out of the unborn space. Every sound I hear is mantra. Everything I say is mantra. Every taste is bliss and emptiness. Every movement I make is the gesture of the deity. That's what coming into this relationship is. So sangha is part of that, because it's saying you're already part of the world. The whole of Buddhism is saying, don't live on your little island. It's terribly lonely. It's very sad. Come in, the water's lovely. And anyway, you're in the water. You're just living in a little barrel. You're bobbing about on the water. In the barrel you can't move and there's nothing to eat. Come in the water. Oh, the water's very dangerous. Maybe not. Maybe not. So, the Bodhisattva vow is about recognizing all sentient beings have been my mother. I have an obligation to them, and in all my future lives, I will work for the benefit of others. The essence of the vow is its infinity. It's not linked or limited. We're not saying just for this life. We're not saying as long as the going's good. We're not saying until I retire. We're saying all my life. On my deathbed, as I'm dying, I will remember all sentient beings. Wow, there's something. I won't be thinking about myself and all I'm leaving. I'll be thinking, may all beings be happy. Imagine if that was your last thought when you died. Wouldn't that be lovely? Rather than thinking, oh, I don't want to die. You're going to die anyway. I don't want to die. It's like, ugh. It's just shrinking thought, isn't it? It's full of turbulence and trouble. It's full of feeling diminished. May all beings be happy. When we walk down the street, may all beings be happy. That's really the heart of the Bodhisattva vow. I will do whatever I can for the sake of all beings. Whatever I can means it stands in relation to my own capacity. For all beings means I won't make a differentiation between friends and enemies. That is to say, I am going to leave the realm of the contract. If I help you, I know you and I know that you will help me back. So we'll both keep our little scorecard. Lots of people do that. You might go to the pub and you think, I'll buy you a drink. You bought me one last week, so I'll get, they've got a little kind of auditor in their head. If you take the Bodhisattva vow, you get rid of contracts. You get rid of boomerangs. You just think, I'm for you. Whether you're for me or not, doesn't matter. I'm for you because I'm for you. But why? What would you get out of it? What would I want to get out of it? I'm for you. But how can you do that? Won't you deplete your own resources? How will you have enough if you give everything to everyone else? Well, again, if you are a small pot, if you are a limited container like this, it will be very hard because you will come to a limit. And of course our physical body can get exhausted. What we're talking about here is the quality of the heart. It doesn't mean that you have to, give up, sell all your possessions and become homeless. That is useful for some people, but for most people, it's important to continue with your family, your job, and so on. It's about opening the heart, just to feel, I'm for you. I'm for you. Even if you turn anger towards me, I'm for you. It's about non-retaliation, or if you like, turning the other cheek. But in the Buddhist sense, it's not so much turning the other cheek as returning to space. So if somebody attacks us or insults us, in that moment, who am I? Because it is really impossible to develop the bodhisattva vow if you have no understanding of emptiness. Because as long as we stay as an individual, I, me, myself, with my history, my likes, my dislikes, someone's going to get to me. I'm going to get really hacked off. What? You get that resistance, that tightening up. How dare you? Huh? You've insulted me. Well, of course the people have. Why wouldn't they insult you? They're all daft. They're zombies. What do you expect? This is samsara. It's not the Garden of Eden. People will be horrible. Why surprised? Why are we surprised? People have the 5 poisons: stupidity, aversion, attachment, desire, envy, pride, and many, many more. So why would people not insult you or give you a hard time? Why would the parking attendant not listen to reason? Why did they insist on writing the ticket even though you had arrived at your car? Because they're like that. They're in a bad mood. Who cares? That's what they are. How are you going to be? Will we be reactive? In which case, anybody we meet will be our master. Anybody we meet will be the dog and we'll be the little tail. Whoop, 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 whoop. So, emptiness is to understand all the personality traits we have, all the hopes and fears we have, all the positions we have are contingent, that is to say, arising due to causes and conditions, and ephemeral. They won't continue. They won't last. It's just this moment. Would you attack this person just this moment? Would you insult this person just for this moment? This person who has been your mother in a previous life, who has made so many sacrifices for you. Children often do that. They get really hacked off with their mom. But I don't need to do that. Why aren't you? I hate you. I hate you. This is the person that made your breakfast. This is the person that does your washing. I hate you. I don't want to live in this house. I never wanted you as my mom. You're useless. Oh, okay. Go down the road, go to the shop, and buy yourself a mum. Here's £2. Go and buy yourself a mum. See how you get on. This is one of the functions of all these Dharma practices, is to act as a stick that stirs the bottom of the pond. The more we have an aspiration, the more we realize all the shit at the bottom of the pond, all the crap inside ourselves that stops us fulfilling it. That's why it's important to overleap yourself, to bite off more than you can chew. If you bite off more than you can chew, what happens? You get a mouthful of stuff and it looks horrible. That's quite useful. Oh, I've still got a lot of work to do. If you waited until you were ready to take the Bodhisattva vow, you'd never do it. Because you'd have to be at the end of the journey before you began it. We begin it not very ready. And part of the journey is betraying other people, letting them down, getting confused. But open, release, begin again. Open, release, begin again. I'm sorry. It's a wonderful practice to apologize from the heart. Because not only does the other person feel seen, but you recognize your own limitation. So the Bodhisattva vow, when we develop it, is a functional practice which helps us to see the ossification, the drying up, the calcification, the way in which we become solid and we develop the shell around us, and to just keep moving and shaking it up. And a certain point in this is, don't be afraid of making mistakes. Mistakes are part of life. if you act, you will make mistakes. Is it better to make a mistake? Imagine the Good Samaritan. Here's this guy lying at the side of the road. He's not very well. He takes him to a hotel and says, I have to go on my journey, but I'll give you the money to feed him. And they give him this food. And when the guy comes back to health, he says, I'm a vegan. Oh, we've given you nothing but beef soup. Huh? It's like that. You help people with the resources you have. It's not always going to fit. Sometimes it will be helpful, sometimes it won't. Getting it wrong is part of participation. It's a whole fantasy that these lovely shiny Tibetan pictures make, is that these guys always get it right. But we are in this world where lots of things are wrong. And that's part of it, is what is my self-hatred? Can I recognize it? What is my aspiration to help? So when I make a mistake, I can recognize it and apologize it, but I don't need to add on the self-hatred. In the morning we were looking at the difference between sort of ordinary pain and the Buddhist notion of suffering, that the suffering is something you add on. You will always make mistakes. We don't always say the right thing. We can upset people in various ways. Different people have different needs and we don't always get it right. That doesn't mean that you're betraying the Bodhisattva vow. Because in the Buddhist tradition, the meaning of any act is determined by its intention, not by its outcome. Now, there are many different readings of that in other philosophical systems and so on. But it's very important. If your heart is true, you try your best, and sometimes you'll get it wrong. You can just apologize, be open-minded, and continue. But don't give up hope in your good intention. So Bodhisattva vow is very important. A Bodhisattva means, the term itself, Bodhi means awakening, and Sattva means being. It simply means that your being is connected fundamentally with the project of awakening. It arises from saying, the reason I'm here, what I'm about as a person, is to help awakening, to bring about my own awakening and the awakening of other beings. Now, that's different from helping people. Feeding people is very good. Helping people who are sick, helping people who are distressed, that is very good. But that won't necessarily help them awaken. How do you help people awaken? Well, if you've never awakened yourself, you wouldn't know. You wouldn't even know what it was like. So, part of the Bodhisattva path is to understand wisdom as a basis for compassion. The two things, in the tradition example, they're like the two wings of a bird. They have to be in harmony. Most of us have, tried to be reasonable people in our lives. So in that sense, we know a reasonable bit about compassion. We may not be very good at it, but at least, we do our best to help people. So one wing is reasonably well developed. What we don't have very much of is wisdom. Wisdom is about emptiness. Seeing that when you make your Lego castle, it's just pieces of Lego. And it's a castle, and it's just Lego. There is an emptiness to the castle, which doesn't mean there's no castle at all. There is a castle, but there's no castle. And we apply this to every aspect of life. There is a hospital, there's no hospital. There is a patient, there's no patient. There are children, there are no children. Things are there and not there simultaneously. It's the same if you go to the cinema and you see a film. If it's, for example, an action film, you get very drawn into it and you see these cars coming into, think they're going to crash. What is in front of you? A white screen with bits of coloured light going onto it. That's what you're seeing. But no, you feel you are seeing cars. Suspending disbelief, getting caught up in the narrative, getting caught up in the image, that's necessary for art. You have to surrender yourself into it. Buddhism is about not suspending this disbelief. It's about maintaining disbelief. Not the disbelief of, I'll have nothing to do with it, it's all a poison chalice. But a deconstructive disbelief that says, this is an illusion. I can be in it and out of it, in it and out of it. Then, when you go to help someone, you don't take your helping so seriously. And if the person doesn't want the help that you've offered them, it just dissolves into space. It wasn't so invested. It's when things are too concrete, when you've gone to great trouble to do it, then you can feel that obligation. I used to remember that as a kid. You know, we get these Christmas presents from some old auntie somewhere. And I would say, well, I don't like it and I don't want it. My mum would say, well, you have to write a thank you letter. I said, well, what am I thanking her for? I don't want it. I never asked for it. It's stupid. But you have to thank her. So, emptiness means everything has the same nature, which is empty. And the values that we ascribe to things come from ourselves. That is a really important thing. You can find it again and again. You just need to go along to a shop, I don't know, to rent a DVD. And you're standing there looking at all these covers, and someone comes up and they take something off the shelf, and you think, wow, you're daft. Why are they going to look at that? They're going to look at that because they're them. You walk down the street and you see someone driving a car and you think, what are you driving that for? Because they're them. Other people are other. They're not you. And your values doesn't tell you anything about the other person. That's where emptiness is really important. Emptiness says, oh, with your Lego set, you've made a little Barbie doll. Why would you want to do that? I've made a killer soldier. Don't you want to have a killer soldier? No, I want to have a Barbie doll. Well, you're stupid, aren't you? Well, that's because you're not the same as me. So, if compassion is going to work, it means we're going to have to connect with people who are not us. And if we go towards them from our little box of our assumptions and value systems, we're not going to get very far. In the name of compassion, we're going to be carrying out some colonizing gesture. We're going to be seeking to pull them into our world because we believe our values are right. And this is why in Buddhism, emptiness is so important, because it lets us see the conventional or the constructed or the assumptive or imagined nature of what we take to be true. And we think, oh, it's just my take on it. It has no internal truth. It's my life. This is what I want to buy. This is what I want to eat. This is how I'm going to live. But it doesn't tell me anything about how to connect with other people. So connecting with others is going to take me out of myself. And that connection out of myself is going to put myself into question, which is why compassion supports wisdom. But in order to move towards others, unless I've got a looseness in myself, I'm going to be like a rubber band. As I move towards them, the band will get stretched and stretched, and at a certain point, ping, you come back into something. Oh, I've had enough. This person's making me feel really weird. So you're still looking at them in terms of your home base. Can you leave home and launch yourself truly into the world of the other? In that way, wisdom and compassion flow together, and then the Bodhisattva vow takes on its deep meaning. And you can see, I hope, how this is a very profound preliminary practice that supports exactly the Dzogchen view that everything is pure from the very beginning. In a sense, the Dzogchen view says your nature is pure And all these thoughts and so on that are arising, they vanish by themselves. And yet, when we sit in the meditation, some thoughts seem incredibly sticky. They seem to attach themselves to everything they come in contact with. And so the preliminary practice is just, it's like if you don't clean your frying pan or something, it gets all this grease around the outside of it. And then you need to get a real scouring pad to get the layers of scud off. Otherwise it's tacky every time you touch it. Ugh. And that's what these habitual invested thoughts are like. They're very greasy. So it's not that they are purifying your nature. From the very beginning, our nature is completely pure. What they're doing is thinning the level of obscuration so that we come to a point where we can directly see obscurations are the radiance of the Dharmakaya. What you thought was getting in the way of your life was your life. This is it. This is the unfolding, imaginable, unimaginable world, the radiance of all these Buddhas, and it manifests as going to Tesco's. It doesn't look like the pictures. It's like a holiday brochure, isn't it? The hotel's never the one you saw in the picture. Shall we take a wee cup of tea? Okay, so if we do this 3-hour practice again. Okay. So one of the things we've been looking at is the relationship between what we take to be me and what we take to be not me. So for example, we take our body to be me and we take other people's bodies to be not me. And we take our thoughts and our feelings to be ourselves, and we take states of very openness to be somewhat strange experiences. And the various Buddhist paths are all saying part of our problem is that we have misconstrued these two categories. What is actually me is this unborn openness, this ever-fresh state of awareness. And what is not me is this tumbling change of thoughts and feelings and sensations. But due to attachment and ignorance, we identify with the thoughts and feelings and say, this is me, although they're ungraspable and always running away. And because of that, we don't pay attention to the intrinsic openness of how we are. So in that practice, when we do the 3R and we relax, I think for most of us, very quickly, thoughts and feelings come in and we find ourselves identified with them. And this feels like us. It feels familiar, it feels true, it feels how things are. But it's not me. Who we actually are is that more that first sense with the 3R, just nothing at all. Ungraspable and yet there, because our awareness is there. We're not dead, we're not unconscious, but we're not there as something, as this or that, as good, as bad, as male, female, young, old, whatever it is. It's beyond characterization, beyond particularization, and yet it's just there. So an essential part of the path is to free ourselves from the familiar identifications with things which are not me, in order to have more space to become me. And in the tantric preliminary practices, part of that is through the offering of the mandala. Mandala here means the ordinary mandala of the world. Mandala just means circle, really. Mandala is a coming together of factors. It's a kind of shape. In a sense, it's like a gestalt. It's something which appears to have an integrity. So we offer, according to the tradition, you offer the world as constructed in Indian cosmology. In the center of the world there is a vast mountain called Mount Meru, and around it there are 4 major continents, then 8 minor continents with different kinds of seas around them, and then you have rings of iron mountains and so on. So you imagine the whole universe and you offer that. For most of us that doesn't mean very much, because we don't really live in a world that's like that. So best is, first thing, offer something you don't need and you don't have and maybe you don't want. I always start with America. I've never been to America, and I hope in all my future lives I'm not born there. So for me, offering America is dead easy. Offering Scotland's a bit more difficult. So generally, if you start by offering your friends toys, that's a very nice way to begin. Offer their bicycle. Keep your own to the last. In that way you get used to seeing that what we're attached to is, of course, not just our possessions, but our possessions as they stand in relation to other people's possessions. Because, say, when I was young, I always wanted to go to India, and I never wanted to go to North America. So, but in some ways, the value of India was that it wasn't like North America. Having never been to North America, I have no idea what it's really like, but it was the construct in my head. So, usually, when something is being valued, something else is being undervalued. There's a kind of splitting and projection going on. So, in terms of this tantric offering, we keep offering everything. We offer, generally speaking, the things which we like and which are enjoyable. So we offer beautiful food, we offer nice houses, we offer swimming pools, we offer ease and attention, we offer the best doctors and so on. We offer whatever could be pleasing and heartwarming. And we do this again and again and again. That is to say, we take all the objects that we might want to identify with and say, this is me, this is my world, this is what I'm for. And through the offering of them, we say, this was me, but it's now no longer me. This was me, it's now no longer me. It's one thing to do that when you go to the toilet. The food that comes out of your body as poo was once you. You were your poo. But now it goes down the loo. Bye-bye. Huh? But it was you. It was in your body. It was part of you. So every day we take food which is not me, and we stick it in our mouth, and then gradually it becomes me. And then it becomes poo in the loo. Bye-bye. We do this all the time. You breathe in, the air is not me, becomes me, becomes not me. All the time. All the time. This is the nature of our existence. Me, not me. Me, not me. Fusion, separation. Fusion, separation. So when we do this mandala offering, we're attending to this process. Internalization, identification, introjection, and then disassociation, cutting off, splitting, projection, separating off. These are the primary functions of our identification in the world. In terms of most modern psychotherapy theories, particularly Kleinian and post-Kleinian theory, it's very clearly identified how these things operate. So when you offer the mandala, everything which could be you, you offer. And then you can continue to offer everything which is absolutely not you. And by being able to offer these two equally, you come to see that there's no real difference. Having offered your possessions, you can then offer your body. You can offer your eyes, your ears, your heart, and so on. But who would I be if I didn't have a body? Well, when we do the 3R meditation, if you really go into that, you don't have a body. What you experience is the immediacy of the currents of energy arising and passing, which create these momentary constructs. The mind itself is stable and open and grounded, and these temporary phenomena are creating patterns which come and go, come and go. Most of the time, that's not what we have. Most of the time, we have, this is me. So this body itself, this precious body that we spend so much time taking care of, is actually part of the world. In some of the texts, it's described as a rented body or a borrowed body, that we borrow our body from the 5 elements. Earth, water, fire, wind and space come together and create this structure. And at a certain point, when we move towards death, they will disband. Just as a corpse, if you leave it, will start to crumble, it will rot. When the police find bodies that have been dead for a while, they're blown up, they're bloated, because the internal corruption means the air element is coming out. And that's what happens. So, offering our body means I am not this body. Also, I don't have this body. I mean, we're used to nowadays with computers and so on having possessions that we haven't a clue about how they operate. People say, oh, this is my car, but if it breaks down, they don't know what to do. So you have a computer. It's your computer, but you manage to press a few buttons on it and ping and get you an email, but that's about it for most people. So we're used to being very stupid owners of possessions. But number one stupid owner is of your body. You haven't a clue how it functions. It's got all these amazing things inside and you just hope that it's fine. But the body is not a possession. The body is you, but in a non-reductive way. That is to say, your body is a dynamic, energetic radiance arising moment by moment as the joyful display of the Dharmakaya. It's not a thing. One arm, one leg, one nod of the head, keep moving. Yeah, it's like that. This is who I am, this is what my body does. And as children, we get inducted into this thing. It's my body, it's me, and we fight in the playground. We want to be good at running and so on. And everything in our culture is saying, this is your true nature. But actually, the body is always ungraspable. It changes by itself. At a certain point, we feel very tired and we have to go to sleep. We don't decide that we are tired. The body is tired. We wake up and we think, oh, my back's a bit sore. But it's not my back's a bit sore. Sensation is arising onto which we put that story. If we stay close to the body as direct experience, which you can develop an awareness of through things like Tai Chi and Shiatsu and Qigong and so on, moment by moment, the body is revealing itself in different ways. It's never an entity. Which means offering the body is helping you to awaken to the sense the body is a display, just as this whole room is a display. So at first when we offer the mandala, there's me offering things. I'm real, the things are real, and I truly offer them to the Buddha. But the more we do the practice, we want to come to see that the things we offer are actually moments of experience. We wrap them, just as if you give someone a present, usually you wrap it in nice paper. We take the direct experience of the world and we wrap it in concepts and we say, here you are. But actually, when you get a present, you take off the wrapping paper to get to the present. You don't take the wrapping paper and say, God, this is gorgeous, and throw the present away. That would be a bit silly. But that's what we do all the time. We hang on to the concept and let the experience go. This is tragic. Then, the more we offer, we see we don't need any wrapping paper at all. It's this immediacy. So when you're walking down the street, every step you make, your body's slightly turning. As it is, the visual field is opening up differently. Instantly offering this, instantly offering the sensation of your feet, the movement of your shoulders, the sense of the breath coming and going. Everything which arises is the ceaseless flow of offering. Offering arising from the unborn Dharmakaya into the unborn Dharmakaya. Just as it says in the Dzogchen text, you should meditate sky to sky. Your mind is like the sky. Whatever is arising is just like rainbows and clouds moving in the sky. Sky meets sky with this interface of material. In the same way, offering everything all the time. Sounds like this. We say it's a car, but really it's a Buddha have a Buddha says, fantastic, I haven't had one of these for a while. Everybody offers me cars. What am I going to do with a car? We don't have cars in Buddha land, but they're incredibly useful. So in that way, trying to stay open, relaxed. And the idea of offering, again, is no reward, no contract, not waiting for any expectation back. I can give away everything, and then I will have nothing. And because I have nothing, I will be freed from the need for something. If you write your letter to Santa Claus, dear Santa, please give me, Santa sometimes doesn't understand English very well, so he might bring the wrong thing. That is to say, the more clearly defined your hopes are, the more determined you are to get something, often it is the more you set yourself up for heartache. Do you think that's true? Somehow hanging loose and being able to work with what comes is probably a better basis for happiness. So in that way, when we offer, and we offer everything, now we have nothing. Well, remember the old saying, beggars can't be choosers? Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Give us this day our daily bread. No expectation, no demand. Then you can be grateful for whatever you get. You say, oh, what is this that's coming? Well, this is the radiance of the unborn Dharmakaya. Looks like cheese. Smells like cheese. But today, the Dharmakaya is coming in the form of cheese. Isn't that amazing? How do they do it? It must be modern packaging. Everything is luminous. Everything is radiant if you're with it. You know? When you wake up in the morning and you have your first cup of tea, it's very nice because it's familiar. But it's also fresh. So, there you have the choice. Do I go towards the familiarity? Oh, that's good. That's just what I needed. Or, you can have both. If you stay with the freshness, you still get the reassurance, but you're in touch with the unborn nature, the freshness of the experience. The same with everything. You bite into an apple. You cook something. Maybe you cook an omelette. You've probably eaten lots of omelettes in your life. But at this moment, in this way, the knife cuts into it and it's slightly soft and you feel the sponginess on the outside. And when you get through that layer that's been hardened by the contact with the oil, it suddenly gets softer. Oh. And so the movement of your shoulder. And that's your life. And what is that? Where is that coming from? Well, if you have nothing, it's coming from nothing, because everything else is gone. Hasn't got anywhere else to come from. When we do this 3R, everything open, it's coming from nothing. Some of us in the past have done this pet practice, where we make the sound pet very strongly and use it to free the mind from any thoughts and constructs. And in that state, there's nothing. And then thoughts come. So where do they come from? If there's truly nothing, if that moment of openness is infinite, that is to say, not finite, not limited, there is no boundary to it. If there is no boundary to it, it can't be imported from somewhere else. It comes from inside the emptiness. And this is the central understanding of Tantra and Dzogchen. All phenomena are the flowers or the rainbows or the radiance of emptiness itself. That is to say, there is no substance anywhere. Everything is truly an illusion. So what you've got is the immediate vibrancy of just this. And it's coming, and it's coming, and it's coming. And it never stops. And if you're in it, not trying to secure it, not trying to cut it up, not trying to make it familiar, how free that is. Because it comes as it comes. But you now are also empty. So if we think back to the image earlier about a room, if you have a room with a lot of furniture in it, what you can do with it is very limited. Because the furniture will be determining the usage. But if you just have an empty space, you can do anything in it. That's why in the theatre the stage is so important. You take all the props off, you just have the space, the open space. Anything is possible in that space. In the same way, when we offer everything, we're just an open space. Then we can become everything. So hopefully you can see again how wisdom and compassion are working together. You get rid of your assumptions, you get rid of the limiting thoughts about who you are and what you can do and what you can't do. And then you just get on with it. You just get on with it. How do we do that? By just being out. If you have to take care of somebody who's sick, maybe it's somebody who you are closely connected with, maybe your mother or your father, and they're old, and maybe you have to bathe them, or you have to, if they've messed themselves, you have to wipe this excreta and so on off their body. And you might think, oh, I can't do that, it's my dad, it's my mum. But there's somebody in front of you who needs help. So who needs help? This person. Who is this person? Somebody who needs help. So if you stay in your category, you feel this reservation. How could I? You know, there's some kind of taboo of role relations in the family. But here's the need, and you just go into that. And it's the same way that the more definitions and decisions we have about who we are, the less freedom we have to respond to the situation in the world. So, offering the mandala, the sun, the moon, the planets, the mountains, the seas, the cities, the countries, the motor cars, the food, the clothing, everything, everything, everything. Then you find a kind of freedom. In the higher tantric practices, in the offerings that they have, they also offer human meat, dog meat, feces, urine, and so on. These are not the normal things that you would think are a nice offering. You wouldn't want to offer them to the vicar. But why are they offered? They're offered to help you move beyond your categorization of saying, this is disgusting. Ugh. Ugh. I don't like this. This is horrible. Ugh, this is filthy. How could you? How could you? How could you means, in my system of categories, I allocate the value of disgusting. Therefore, this is truly disgusting, and therefore one shouldn't do that. So we know where we stand. Except, what are we standing on? Concepts. It doesn't mean that you should actually offer people horrible things. And please don't kill local dogs. It's not very nice. It's not about doing these things externally. It's not a kind of macho heroic thing, like becoming some kind of blood brother or doing some kind of strange bonding ritual. It's about examining your own mind and seeing, what is my fear? What is my inhibition? How does that grasping, that feeling this is impossible, how does that stop me recognizing my own innate freedom? And also, how does it stop me being open to respond to other people? In the London Underground at the moment, there are some adverts from a charity. I can't remember the name of it, but it's an organization for people who have very intense facial disfigurement. And they have these photos of people with completely mangled and distorted faces. And you can really look at these pictures. They're very interesting, because usually people with these kind of faces, I certainly don't see them in my streets. So there's something about, what is that urge to turn away? The horror of seeing someone's face. And then you see these eyes looking out. Oh, but ugh. And it's exactly that, isn't it? You know, if you have a disfigurement, always you're encountering people's revulsion. And we, maybe not in these cases, but we all, I'm sure, have some degree of revulsion to certain kinds of people. We may feel it for people who murder or who attack children, who do all sorts of activities, or who look in particular ways. Now, from the Buddhist point of view, all of these beings have been your own mother. How could that be possible? How could somebody who has been my mother be a pedophile? Well, due to the turning of karma, people end up in many limited, distorted positions. How can I remain open and believe that somebody has an infinite potential, even if that has got wrapped in some particular shaping which seems so dense, so intense, so perverted that you might want to think, well, I don't want to be there. In your work, you might be working with people who are dangerous. Maybe they're in prison or forensic units. People who've caused trouble, who've murdered, who've harmed, and who might even exult in cruelty. They might have no guilt or insight into what they do. And we might say, oh, this is the kind of person society wants to lock up and throw away the key. We want nothing to do with them. But it's a central question in any spiritual path. How do you relate to people who have behaved in ways that take them beyond? Because they challenge us to, what is the limit of our compassion? That is to say, in this Buddhist frame, can I bring my wisdom and compassion together to have the wisdom to see both the emptiness of the situation and the dependent origination structure out of which this terrible deed has been done, because the deed is still terrible. If somebody's raped and murders a child, that's terrible. That's absolutely terrible. But the person still has the Buddha nature. So you have to work with the limitation of the behavior and the infinite potential. The danger, of course, is that we split the two. In staff teams in these kind of units, usually somebody sees the victim in the offender and the other person sees only the offender, and then everything gets into conflict and they get different responses from people. The best exit from that is to look at yourself. If we don't know our own cruelty, if we don't know our own selfishness, the big danger is we'll project this onto other people. That's one of the benefits of meditation, is that when we just relax and sit, all kinds of stuff arise in ourselves. Hatreds, envy, murderous feelings, sexual feelings, and so on. And we have to think, oh, if this was to come into activity, what difficulty and turbulence this could make. So I have all the fuel ready to create chaos in the world. My task is to link this knotted energy back into its own ground of openness that will let the knots untie. Because the desire to kill someone, the desire to say, I hate you, I don't care about you. You think of what that is. It's such an assertion, it's such an upwelling of energy. No object, because all my life people have been coming at me, they've been pissing on me, they've been giving me a hard time. Well, I don't care. Subject says, my freedom depends on the annihilation of the object. From a Buddhist point of view, tears should fall from our eyes. We say, oh brother, oh sister, oh yeah, of course, we understand. But you have the wrong method. Killing the object doesn't free the subject. If you want to be free, kill the subject, don't kill the object. You killed the wrong one. Look in your own mind. Look at this mangled turmoil and chaos. Cut. I'm not that. Then you're peaceful. This is not suicide. This is radically cutting the root of ignorance, recognizing I am not these impulses. It's the same, isn't it, when there are many young people nowadays who cut themselves. They feel some turmoil and pain inside, they feel upset and distressed, and they don't know what to do. So they can end up easily getting into a situation where they attack themselves. Because by making an incision into the body, through various mechanisms, there's a kind of release. It helps to shift gear. You go into an altered state and so on. We can understand why they would do that, but it's a very poor method. You can learn much better methods, kinder methods, more gentle methods. It's exactly the same thing. It's exactly what the Buddha said. Everywhere, all beings want to be happy, but they do nothing but create the causes of their own unhappiness. People don't, I think, as far as I know, they don't run around doing dreadful things because they want to have suffering themselves. They're trying to free themselves from suffering. But these are very ineffective and stupid methods. So, coming back to the idea of the mandala offering, the more we offer outer forms and inner conceptualizations, the more loose we can feel. But then we have to offer our shadow. We have to explore and know all the darkest parts of ourselves. Our cruelty, our greed, our laziness, our hatred. Be aware of this and then offer this as well. The Buddhas don't mind. They're quite able to cope with our anger. They're not going to be frightened of it. What we have to believe is that this is something we can offer. That is to say, one of the things that keeps us bad is secrecy. Are you more likely to do a bad thing if you can get away with it than if you're likely to have your name in the newspapers? I think that's called a rhetorical question, because it's pretty obvious, isn't it? Secrecy makes us bad. I remember at school, we had to do these exercises in précis, and we did them on these essays of Addison and Steele. And one of the essays was about a bishop who was traveling in a carriage, and it was in the early trains, and he's sitting in the first class compartment, but then he became very, very ill, and they had to take him to hospital. And in the hospital they found he had a second class ticket. Because if you're a bishop, you don't expect anyone to ask you for your ticket. Oh, please. That's what people do. We try to get away with it. Try to get away with it. What makes us dangerous is that we cheat ourselves. If we didn't cheat ourselves, we wouldn't be cheating other people. Do you think that's true? What does it mean to cheat yourself? It means to compartmentalize yourself and have little areas inside, a bit like, again, the right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing. We do things kind of out of focus. The person who creates chaos is not the person who has to be accountable. Recently somebody was this person had been with a friend in a bar and drunk a lot, celebrating something, and then he left the bar and he didn't go to the toilet first, so he was standing in the bus stop and he decided he needed a pee. So he went up and pissed on the wall of a restaurant. And a waiter came out from the restaurant and shouted at him, so he hit the waiter. So then more waiters came out and they called the police, so he was taken to the police station. And when he came into the hospital, he was completely furious. He said, how dare they? How dare they arrest me? I'm a good person. And the therapist is trying to say, well, you know, pissing on someone's wall in public is probably not going to make people like you very much. Yeah, but they shouldn't have. Yeah, but they shouldn't have. So there you can see very clearly the part of the person who feels disinhibited and free just to do what they like is not the whole person. The person who gets the consequence is not the person who was pissing on the wall. That's the important thing, isn't it? And that's what it means to recognize your own shadow. That unless you get to know the whole of you, all the different aspects, it's very difficult to free yourself up. Which is why when we do the meditation and you start to fall asleep, or you get bored, or you go off on a fantasy, this is very, very useful and helpful. This is not that you're bad at meditating, it's just that you're reluctant to know who you are. You are a lazy fantasist. You are just out to lunch. You're not nearly as clear as who you think you are. You know, when you're on the ball, doing your work, doing this and that, we have a sense of clarity. But as soon as you relax a bit, you see all this stuff. I mean, this is what the Freudian unconscious is all about. Just weird stuff. Now this is us. So the more you can know this about how you get lost, your lostness is part of your foundness. Instead of trying to get rid of it, this is me too. All the dark thoughts that might come, all the strange mental states, this is me. They're not an obstacle to my path to glory. They are my path to glory. This is the path. Knowing I am lazy, I am dull, I'm not interested in this. What am I doing here? I'd rather be somewhere else. All these different kinds of thoughts. This is how my mind functions. I say yes, then I mean no. I say no, but somehow I keep doing it. What is this? Oh, this is the unity of samsara and nirvana. This is the nature of duality as it arises. We are divided against ourselves. And the only way to stop being divided against yourself is to allow all the bits of yourself. Most of the time, we don't do this. We think, I know how to stop being divided against myself. I'll find the bad bits and get rid of them. Does that work? Maybe not. Because the bad bits are mixed in with the good bits. They're just brother and sister. They're so close together. Most of us wouldn't like to do a DIY appendectomy. It would be a bit difficult. In the same way, trying to cut bits out of your psyche. I must be a good boy. I must be a good boy. It's the sort of thing I had to do at school. Lines, write out 100 times. I will not cause trouble. I will not cause trouble. I will not cause trouble. At the end of which you're so angry and pissed off, you're just ready for mayhem. So, in the same way, in the meditation, whatever is bad and limited, stay with it. Don't try to push it away. Don't fall into it. Stay close to, present with that experience, and you will start to see that it is impermanent and it will go by itself. But the more you try to correct yourself and improve yourself, the more you're likely just to get tied in more knots. This is the Dzogchen approach to this. In some of the other Buddhist traditions, they would say, no, whenever you find you have a bad thought, you should immediately recognize this and pray to the Buddhas for help never to have such thoughts again. That's also possible. But that's to say, I have to get rid of this. That's nice on an interactive social level, but for real meditators, when you really look at your mind, it's not the mind you wanted. The mind you've got is the only mind you have. You can't get a mind transplant. This is your mind. How your mind is the limit of your existence. If you have anger, you've got to work with that anger. If you're jealous, you've got to work with that jealousy. If you're by nature stupid and stubborn and always want to get your own way, that's the coal face for you. And if you deny who you are, how will you be able to be integrated? And then, of course, if you're in a blindness towards yourself, a denial towards yourself, the very idea that you could help other people is a bit silly. Because who's going to be helping them? Somebody who is frightened of themselves. So the mandala offering is something very deep. It's not just about practicing generosity, but it's about learning to fully welcome and embrace all of oneself, and to feel that all of that is a worthy offering for the Buddha. Because the Buddha, this Buddha here, for example, is already quite at home with everything. The Buddha's not worried about anything. That's the whole thing, isn't it? The Buddha's not making discriminations of good, bad, right, wrong. He's just saying, oh yeah, that's that. You know, in some of the Tibetan paintings that they have of the Buddha at the moment of enlightenment, he's attacked by demons who are throwing spears and firing arrows at him, and he's being tempted by people who are being sexually provocative towards him. He doesn't have to annihilate the object. He just releases himself from that. He releases his fear, which is linked with releasing his anger, and he releases his desire. It's just saying, oh, that's there. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So what? Then he's free. Tibetans have a saying that it's better to cover your own feet with leather than to try to cover the whole road. And you imagine what moralizing positions are about. It's always trying to say, if only everyone behaved in this way, why can't we all get together and then we'll do it this way and then it'll all be fine. But it never quite works out. Put the leather on your own feet, being tolerant, and then offer everything to the Buddha. Are there any thoughts or questions about that or any of the other things we've done so far?
I'm beginning to have some sort of intellectual understanding about how the Nundro and the Dzogchen might fit together in terms of, for instance, paying attention to what you think and do, because that has consequences for yourself and other people, but also recognizing that's not who you ultimately are.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot more confusion, I think, when it actually comes to putting things into practice.
Mm-hmm.
Because, for instance, doing the Nundro, I have the sense of, say, positive actions and negative actions, and that gives a sense of kind of direction and structure, and it feels like if I'm doing more positive actions and less negative actions, I'm more likely to bring about causes of happiness, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
But then when I get a flavour of what you're saying about Dzogchen, and I might have got this wrong, the sort of effect it has in me, I think, was to think less, actually, and to feel more instinctive and spontaneous, I suppose, and to kind of feel like these kind of positive actions and negative actions are just concepts, and actually the negative actions are sort of, they may be obscurations, but it all comes from this place of spaciousness.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a kind of sense in me that feels like it's not so important to worry about my actions then. So I know that may not be the aim of it, but that's the kind of effect, that's where I'm at the moment in terms of the effect it's having. So my question I suppose is about what's the place of ethics in Dzogchen, or what's the sort of, I'm not quite sure exactly what my question is, but does that make sense?
Okay. Okay. Okay, but say you're now practicing to be a very good person, and you're being very, very careful, and you want to do the very best. But we're married, and we have a joint bank account, and I'm a habitual gambler. All your carefulness is not going to do much good, is it? Because we're never going to have any money, and you're always going to be pissed off with me, and I'm always going to be pissed off with you because I don't have any money for gambling. Now, if you take the Bodhisattva vow, it's not just monogamy you're going for, it's absolute polygamy. You are now marrying your karma to all sentient beings. So, sorting out your little garden of how your mind is, what about everyone else's mind? That's the difference. Of course, one should try to be careful and concerned, but other people are very, very careless. So, other people are spoiling my world. Your cat comes into my garden and does a poo on my favorite plant. I don't like your cat, but I'm a Buddhist, so could you stop your cat coming in my garden? Do you see the point? So, being good, that's fine, but the limits of our good intention are always, I would suggest, going to be thwarted by the world, because all sorts of things happen. So what the Dzogchen view is trying to do is just take the will to power out of the ethics, because often behind the good intention is a desperate desire to have a safe world. If only we do the good things, life will be safe and I will be sorted. But I don't think that's actually true. We just think again what the Chinese are again doing in Tibet just now, causing mayhem. They are dedicated to the absolute final destruction of any proper meditative life there. They don't want any rivalry. They have a view of the world, a highly materialistic view, which will entitle them to chew up everything. So the monasteries will just be tourist attractions, and everything else will just be about getting money, getting more people there. Now, that is awful, but the poor monks who are making protests, they're not going to change very much, because the international community shows itself again and again that it doesn't do very much. That's not a cause for despair, it's just thinking that the point of transformation has to be profoundly meditative, integrative, as well as enacted in the world. So, one of the traditional sayings is that your view or the way your mind operates should be as vast as the sky, and your behavior should be as fine as the point of a needle. Spontaneity is not the same as self-indulgence. I think there's an absolute difference, because as far as I would understand it, impulsivity is the rapid mobilization of patterns of behavior which one has had for a long time. Spontaneity is the direct movement of energy out of spaciousness. And when you're spacious, you're connected with the environment. So, for example, if you're dancing with people, if you can be very spontaneous, but you're not going to bump into them because you're there. You can feel their bodies coming towards you. But, you know, people get a few, oh, I'm going to have a wee dance now. Oh, sorry, mate. No, I didn't. No, sorry. No, I'm just having a good time. Oh, what else, Mark, going on here?
So there's a sort of natural, organic morality within that spontaneity.
Absolutely, because you see the other person's face. Because if you're part of the world and you're connected with the world, what benefit would you have to dominate other people? It's the ethics of participation which is grounded in the sense, I am part of this. I would suggest to you that when we're at our most unethical, it's when we feel estranged from the world and either feel entitled to take more than our fair share or pissed off because we're not getting something. We go into a retaliation. So in that sense, non-duality is of its very nature ethical. The bit that's not ethical is the shadow bit that I was just talking about. If we don't know these locked little nexes of habitual functioning, the traditional things that are called samskaras or duce, part of the 5 skandhas, the second of these 12 linked nidanas of co-origination, that's what locks us into impulsivity. So that's where meditators can get lost. For example, the famous story that some of you will know that Gampopa tells in the Jewel Ornament of Liberation about somebody who was once a general and he killed many, many people. And at a certain point he became very sad about this. So he renounced his military activity and took up the practice of dharma, and for many years lived in a cave in the mountains. And one day, after he'd done his ritual worship, he took some of the offerings and sat outside on a little stone shelf and threw down the crumbs. And many birds gathered there, and he had the thought, oh, if I had as many soldiers as there are birds here, I could raise an army and defeat my enemies. At which point he got up and left his hermitage and went down into the valley and carried on as a soldier. And that's these unresolved, unrecognized things, because clearly this is somebody who's dedicated so much of their life to changing, but some little pocket hasn't quite been seen, and suddenly it's energized and captivated, and that's where you go. So, well, I think I've said before that one of the main things that my teacher would say again and again, I don't trust anyone, and number one, I don't trust myself. And he also said of himself, I'm lion number one, cheater number one. And that's a very good basis for proceeding. If you know how lost you are, how confused you are, then you will be very tentative. Spontaneity is not blind. You can be spontaneous with a degree of prudeur. You know, you can be a bit kind of, a little bit, you know, you're working with what's there. So the bad practice of in this way would be to get lost. And of course, we don't really have time to go into it, but the very famous story here again is of the birth of demonic forms into our universe, which came about because there was the son of a rich man and his servant, and the rich man's son wanted to see the spiritual teacher, so he went with his servant, and the teacher said, the mind is like the sky, it's completely open, it is devoid of any contamination, like the sky free of clouds. So they went away, and afterwards they both in a different way started to practice. The servant thought the mind is like the sky, so the sky is very clear, and he looked very clearly and precisely at whatever was there. And so his behavior became more and more finely attuned, because he could actually see, oh, it's you. So he would be completely connecting with that person just as they were, with each thing. Whereas the son of the rich man thinking, oh, my mind is clear. I'm always pure. No matter what I do, I'm completely pure. So he started to be more and more abusive to the people around him. And eventually he was causing a lot of trouble, and the teacher came back, and they went to see the teacher. And the teacher, when he heard their descriptions of what they were doing, he said to the servant, you have completely understood what I said. And to the rich man's son, he says, you've misunderstood everything. This is not at all what I mean. And so the rich man's son killed the teacher. And then many, many bad things happened from that. It's a very long story. But that's exactly the point. If you misunderstand this and you turn it into a justification for self-indulgence, that would be very poisonous. But I would suggest to you that just from the brief version I've given of it, you could see the difference between experience and dogma. The servant went for the experience, and he went right into it, and it remained fresh and open. And the rich man's son took it in a dogmatic way. It became his mission statement. And so he became entitled to push it through under all circumstances. And that's a big difference. Any other thoughts or questions, or how this links with your own practice?
How do we truly know we're acting spontaneously and not just self-indulgently?
Well, just in relation to that. So there's a question. How would you know whether you were truly behaving spontaneously? Well, one of the concepts you find a lot in Dzogchen is about self-liberation. That all phenomena are liberating themselves all the time. It's just, in a sense, it's just another way of talking about impermanence. All phenomena are impermanent. To be spontaneous is to be living on the raw edge of impermanence. That's all. So, if you find yourself caught up in your thoughts, if you're thinking about the past, if you're thinking about the future, worrying, planning, shaping, controlling, then you're not being spontaneous. Now, clearly, if you want to learn Italian, and you're going to Italy in 2 months' time, and every day you're trying to learn 10 words of Italian, you're thinking about the future on one level. So you could say you're planning and preparing, but when you're practicing each word, you're in the moment. So it's about having all your attention in one place, but the place where you are is the total field.
So if you see somebody needs help and you think about it and you plan what you're going to do, that's not exactly spontaneous. But if you see somebody drop something, you go straight away to pick it up, or you just do it, then that's more spontaneous than...
Well, it would depend. I mean, say for example, I don't know, you've got a neighbor who's hurt their back and can't go shopping, and you decide to do the shopping for them. That's very nice, but you need to find out what they want to buy. So to spontaneously buy them stuff they can't eat wouldn't be very helpful. To planning would be to have a direct interaction. There's nothing non-spontaneous about saying, what would you like? The key difference is the sense of, I am an agent acting on the world. When you ask someone, what would you like? In a sense, you're saying, I am a servant rather than an agent. You can fill me with your desire and I'll do that. Would that be right? So the agency is with the other. So that's more the pulsation, that sometimes we are in the service of others, sometimes they're in our service. If you're always wanting to be the humble one who gives, and you can never be queen for the day, that's terrible, because it stops other people serving you. And the same vice versa. So part of the spontaneity is feeling the energy of the situation and letting it flow. Okay, I'm aware that we are due to stop at 5. Shall we just have a short sitting and come to an end for the day? Then we dedicate any merit from our study and practice together. Ugyen Rinpoche Lan Jimbam Gyewan Dien Yedde Da Ugyen Lama Rinpoche Gyewan Dien Yedde Da